Hey guys, happy Thursday, March 14th, 2024. Purpose of this video is to build off of the last Facebook live session that I did, or probably the last video you'll see on the YouTube channel, the latest one I posted, about how my hypothesis is that the inflation that we've seen in from 2022, when we crested at 9% or whatever it was, up through now, maybe even a little before June 2022, that inflation has nothing to do with the 2020 COVID pandemic money printing spree that Powell and sorry, a little traffic issue here, guys. That Powell and President Trump went on. It has nothing to do with that. That inflation hasn't shown up yet, right? It's a scary thought, guys. I know that, like, well, what is the inflation that we had? Well, to me, the inflation we had, just recapping my last video, is from the Great Recession. But I don't want to go through all that all over again. You guys can check that video out when you get a chance. The bottom line is this. I think we haven't seen the full story yet on inflation with regard to 2020. I think that's coming later this decade. That's the best guess I can take at it, because I've seen, just in limited observation, to be fully honest, but limited observation, inflation takes a while to show up, 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 years. So that 2020 inflation, I just don't think the money velocity is fast enough to have it, printed in 2020 and, blowing inflation through the roof in 2022. It's too fast. Okay, so anyway, so let's start with that premise. Okay, so here's some new thoughts to layer on top of that. I'm going to be diving deeper and deeper into this, guys, because it's kind of like forming a central thesis for me in terms of what I think is coming down the road. And then, of course, that broad brushstroke would guide, any decisions I was making on, asset allocation, investment, cash deployment, retrenchment, etc. Right? So I think that here's the premise, guys. Pillar number one. The 2020 inflation hasn't shown up yet. It's going to come towards the end of the decade. Let's call it 2028, 2029. Pillar number two, commercial real estate. As I've talked about in other videos, I've posted this very now famous graphic, famous because the person who first posted it, I think, got a lot of views on it. But it was a graphic showing commercial real estate maturing loans from 2023 to 2028, $3 trillion worth, okay? And how most of those loans are in the banking system. I mean, there's other lenders out there that participated, but it's a banking system issue, right? So you have that as pillar number two. You basically have that tranche of bad commercial real estate loans winding up also at the end of the decade, that being 2028 more specifically, okay? So you kind of have the chance that those two pillars are going to arrive, quote unquote, at around the same time, right? But check this out, guys. Let's take pillar number two a step further. And I believe I talked about this maybe a week or so ago on a Facebook. I talked about it somewhere. I don't know if it was in a YouTube video originally or Facebook Live that I posted on YouTube. But on that U.S. debt clock, guys, go in that lower left area and check out the value of all global derivative investments. It's like somewhere around 650 trillion, give or take a few billion. Definitely in the 600s the last time I looked. And another hypothesis I have is that a chunk of that, even a fraction of that, it would be bad, is tied to the commercial real estate situation. So, in other words, that $3 trillion in maturing commercial real estate loans is linked to some fraction of that 600 plus trillion in global derivatives. Meaning, when the 3 trillion of CRE goes down, it's going to be a whole lot more than 3 trillion. It's going to be a massive domino effect going across, various, investors, institutions, agencies, whatever you want to call them, that hold those derivative bets on commercial real estate, right? So recapping so far, you got 2020 inflation showing up in the late 2020s. You got CRE loans expiring in the late 2020s, and then multiplying in effect through the global derivatives market of 600 plus trillion. Okay. And then pillar number 3, guys, and here's the kicker, is, as we've all probably seen, if you're paying any attention to this type of stuff or you like this kind of stuff, is somewhere in the 2030s. And I had 2035 stuck in my head, but then I looked it up and I see, 2034. I even saw somebody said 2041 now, but that's wrong because that's a government estimate. But anyway, a lot of stuff saying that in the 2030s, that's when the Social Security, Medicare programs, etc., start to come under stress in terms of being able to fulfill the obligation, meaning they'll get paid, but there won't be full payouts to the people that are owed this money. Okay, that's number 1. And number 2, of course, by the time those payouts are being made 10 plus years from now, 10, 15 years from now, it's going to be with massively inflated dollars that are completely worthless for the people who are getting paid in the 2030s and 2040s, right? So what does that have to do with anything? So when you go to that debt clock, guys, now look in the lower right at the unfunded liabilities. Okay, U.S. unfunded liabilities sitting right around 214 trillion, right? So here's the wonderful thing, guys. So on the heels of the first 2 pillars, the 2020 inflation, the CRE market going boom, the derivatives market magnifying that boom, a few years later, or, just on the other side of the decade, you get 200 plus trillion in unfunded liabilities cresting throughout U.S. society in terms of people collecting Social Security, expecting it to pay for things that it's not going to pay for, et cetera, et cetera. And just the U.S. government generally going broke as it tries to fulfill all of these obligations that are going to come due in that decade. Now, even if it's delayed into the 2040s, you could argue the first 2 pillars I'm talking about are enough to completely wreck the economy, completely deliver us into Great Depression Part 2. But when you throw this 3rd pillar in, when you look at the possibility that we could be sustaining a Great Depression that starts in the late 2020s, drifts into the 2030s, and then is met by this 200 plus trillion in unfunded liabilities to once again magnify and multiply it, that's pretty staggering, guys. I mean, that is a 1, 2, 3 punch like we've never seen before. I mean, there's nothing like it. There's nothing on this scale. There can't be. I mean, there can't be anything on this scale because the numbers were always lower, and time has just inflated these numbers. And of course, a lot of times it's just a matter of time, guys. Like the ruse is eventually going to be up, right? I mean, you can make Social Security look okay for a while until it's not okay, right? And then all of a sudden it's not okay, and there's nowhere to hide, there's nowhere to run, there's no money. Whatever money there is doesn't buy anything. And the people who've been paying into Social Security, since they started working and are now retiring, are like, okay, you guys failed me. You guys basically broke the promise. So we know that that's eventually going to happen. It just doesn't look like it until it happens, right? Right now, it's kind of like unfathomable. It's kind of unfathomable that such a thing would happen. It's hard to picture it, but it's going to happen. Okay, it's definitely going to happen. So, anyway, guys, just dealing with the fire truck over here. So this is kind of the central thesis that I'm operating off of, is that these 3 conditions hope everybody's okay. These 3 conditions, the 2020 inflation, the commercial real estate blow up at the end of the decade, and the Social Security Medicare explosion that's going to occur in the next decade, the 2030s, that is going to create an unbelievably potent triple combination. And I think the other thing I just want to point out, guys, just to kind of give you a little epilogue on that 3rd pillar, is that I think that you got to be really wary with these years that they're projecting. Okay, remember, this is the government telling you, hey, things might start to go bad in 2035 to 2040. If the government's telling you it's going to go bad, then you know it's going to go bad earlier. Okay, I mean, if anybody can produce a Congressional Budget Office, projection that turned out to be even remotely accurate, and you can produce that on any one of my pages or post it somewhere where we can all see it, I would be very thankful for that, because I don't think such a thing exists. I think all CBO projections are rose-colored. They all end up being wrong. They all end up being bad, and it'll be bad again. I mean, I think that, the whole FICA, Social Security, Medicare projection business is one you don't want to be in. Okay, I mean, it's definitely going to be wrong. So again, if the official projection, let's just say it's 2035, maybe it's later, maybe they pushed it out, but if they say it's 2035, you got to kind of say to yourself, well, that probably means it's going to be like the early 2030s, maybe even the late 2020s. Maybe that's going to happen at the exact same time as the Trump inflation and the CRE blow up that's bound to happen by 2028. Maybe it all happens at once, right? And I mean, that would be quite a supernova when it comes to the economy imploding and the global economy going down with it. Or going down all around it. So anyway, guys, I had to get this off my chest. I had to kind of get this out there because it all started to sort of coalesce in my head today when I was thinking about the inflation reports we've had lately and how those should have gone down, but they didn't. And then you start thinking about commercial real estate, what's going to happen there. And then started to realize, wait a second, that has a close relationship with the derivatives situation, the 600 trillion plus, and then I'm like, wait a second, if that's all happening in the late 2020s, I already know there's something bad happening in the 2030s, and that's the Social Security situation. So this is really, really staggering, guys, when you think of the scope, the scale, the implication of it. And it's something that, I don't even know if you can prepare for it. I don't know. If you're just a regular guy like me, you're probably going to be squashed like a bug in this whole situation. Just coming out of this thing, able to afford food and water and shelter might be a good enough yardstick. I'm not trying to be apocalyptic to a fault here, but I am trying to emphasize the fact that, a Great Depression type scenario is not going to be pleasant. It's not going to be pleasant for 99.9% of people, just like it wasn't 100 years ago. Okay. We have a template for it already. We don't have to make this stuff up. So anyway, guys, let me know what you think about this. Really, look, I'm not a derivatives expert. I'm not an economist. I would love to hear somebody who really has dug into this stuff pretty deeply, remark on the potential conflation of these three conditions. And just curious, what do you guys think? Do you think this is a plausible hypothesis? Do you think this could happen this way or similar to it, or not at all? So anyway, I appreciate you guys watching. Very, very much so appreciated. Means the world to me when you guys watch a video or drop a like on it or subscribe because of it or whatever. So thanks so much for that. And until next time, guys, hope everybody has a great Thursday night and a great mid-March weekend.